Welcome to the Makemie Monument Park, the home site and burial site of the Reverend Francis Makemie. My name is Mark Fisher. I'm presently the chairman of the Francis Makemie Society that has this park under restoration. It's located between Jenkins Bridge and Sanford on the banks of the Holdens Creek. Francis Makemie was a man with a vision and a mission. Arriving at Rehoboth, Maryland in 1683 at the request of Colonel William Stevens, he immediately went to work in organizing a scattered Presbyterian population. The churches he organized are still in existence and serve the people throughout Somerset, Worcester, and Wicomico counties. Being a dissenter, for which Presbyterians were known, he had to earn his own living. He wasn't financed by the government or the church. And with the help of William Anderson, his future father-in-law, he was able to establish a lucrative business relationship with the island of Barbados in the West Indies. Let's proceed over to the grave site of the Reverend Francis Makemie. We're now at the actual grave site of Makemie and his family, which is marked by this memorial pyramid. In 1684, Makemie set sail for Charleston, South Carolina, which also had a large population of Presbyterians. Not skilled in sailing, he was driven ashore in the Elizabeth River area of what is now known as Norfolk. And a group of Presbyterians there had just lost their minister. He ministered to that group for nearly a year, and the First Presbyterian Church of Norfolk can trace its roots back to that congregation. In the late 1680s, Makemie married William Anderson's daughter, Naomi. They set up their housekeeping on the south side of Matchatank Creek on property that she had inherited. In the early 1690s, Makemie spent a lot of time on the island of Barbados and ministered to the Presbyterian people on that island, where he procured his first license to preach outside of the Anglican Church. In 1698, Makemie returned to the Eastern Shore upon the passing of his father-in-law, William Anderson. He and his wife inherited this plantation known as the Pocomoke Farm, which comprised 1,094 acres and stretched from the east Jenkins Bridge Road to the west Holdens Creek Road. Makemie immediately relocated to this farm upon the death of his father-in-law, and it remained his home site for the balance of his life. In 1699, Reverend Francis Makemie appeared before the colonial governor and council in Williamsburg as a result of complaints from the Anglican Church. He pleaded his case so successfully that it led to the Virginia colonial legislature accepting the Toleration Act passed by the King and Queen. He was the first dissenter or licensed minister outside of the Anglican Church in the New World with his license from Barbados. However, on October 5th, 1699, he was granted a license in Accomack County and designated his home here on this site and another house he owned in Onancock that he inherited from Anderson as places to preach. In the early 1700s, Makemie returned back to the old country to procure additional ministers to bring to the New World. He brought back with him John Hampton and George McNeish, both who went on to make illustrious names for themselves. In 1706, Makemie met with 6 other ministers with very close ties to him in Philadelphia and established the First General Presbytery, of which he became the first moderator. And this is the basis for Makemie being recognized as the founder of Presbyterianism in America. In 1707, Makemie, accompanied by John Hampton, after attending a Presbyterian meeting in Freehold, New Jersey, were on a trip to Boston. In passing through the colony of New York, they were invited to preach in New York City. Having done so without acquiring a license from the colonial governor, they were arrested. They spent 42 days in jail as a result of this before being released. The charges against Hampton were dropped. However, Reverend Makemie had to return in June of that year and stand trial. He did this at tremendous expense on him. However, he was acquitted, and that led to the New York legislature adopting rules that this couldn't happen again, and accepting the Toleration Act, which also created a domino effect throughout the colonies. The establishment of the presbytery and the stand made in New York were the crown jewels of Makemie's life, I believe, and led to what's known as religious freedom that we still enjoy throughout this country. After the trial, Makemie's health started to deteriorate, and he passed away sometime between April and August of 1708 and was buried here on this site. His will is on record in the county seat of Makemie and attests to a man of means. One of the items of interest in that will was that the Presbyterian Church of Rehoboth, Maryland was built on his land, and he bequeathed that to the Presbyterian people forever. This park was established in 1908 under the auspices of the Presbyterian Historical Society of Philadelphia. It functioned for many years under the custodianship of the Francis Makemie Memorial Association and was utilized by different civic organizations, churches, schools for different social events. However, in the 1960s, it suffered its first vandalism. The statue had its hand broke off at the wrist, the face was shot out, and the chest was also shot. It was repaired and removed in 1984 to the Presbyterian Church in Makemie. Once the statue had been relocated, the park was then abandoned, and the growth took over. The grounds grew up in weeds and small saplings. The pyramid was vandalized and nearly about obliterated. The pedestal upon which I sat was spray painted with paint, and it became a dump. People were dumping their trash, old appliances, and what have you down here. In the early summer of 1995, a group of concerned people were alarmed at the condition of this site and held a public meeting down here, from which a committee was formed to meet the following week to see if something couldn't be done. At that meeting, the Francis Makemie Society was founded. We had a 5-point plan. The first was to reactivate the old association or set up a new organization, and instead of bringing any of the bad publicity along with the good forward, we decided to start from scratch. So the Francis Makemie Society became in existence. The next thing we done was to see if we couldn't secure what was here from any further desecration. We put it under the patrol of the Sheriff's Department. We started the process of closing the gate to vehicle traffic and the process of cleaning up. Our next point was to see if we couldn't restore what was here. The pyramid was totally restored in 1996. The spray paint on the pedestal has been removed. We've gated the property, cleaned up the debris, removed all the old appliances out of the creek shoreline, and established a new parking lot and turnaround for the general public. We have further secured the property with our new fence separating the old park from the new parking lot and turnaround, plus beautifying the place. The society still has a lot of goals to fulfill. We're presently having a bronze statue cast by the Turner Sculptures in Malfa to replace the granite one that was removed from the pedestal. We're also going to have the wrought iron fence that encircles the pedestal repaired and fixed. We intend to run this fence down the east side of the property and remove all the growth that has grown up there, separating it from that farmland. We're also engaged with the Virginia Historical Landmark in getting the park recognized as a Virginia Historical Landmark, which would automatically put it on the National Register. We intend to place picnic tables in the recreational area and some park benches throughout the old part of the park, along with a small pavilion in order to have a facility that people can enjoy. This has all been accomplished through the generosity of the people. And the one final thing that we have to do is to preserve it. So we're going to raise money to set up a perpetuation fund to take care of the repairs and its upkeep for the future years. We're now bringing our park tour to a close. However, we're going to motor on up to Rehoboth, Maryland, and meet with the Reverend David Park and tour the old Presbyterian church that Makemie willed to the Presbyterian people.